All right, this is PubMed 2016, real study, not opinion, not me, not anybody else. Real study. Disposable surgical face mask for preventing surgical wound infection in clean surgery. The reason I'm doing this video is I am hearing from everybody that the reason 99% of people are wearing masks all of a sudden again is because doctors do it, so why shouldn't I? Okay, let's see. Abstract background. It says surgical face masks were originally developed to contain and filter droplets containing microorganisms expelled from the mouth, nose, etc. of healthcare workers during surgery, thereby providing protection for the patient. However, there are several ways in which surgical face masks could potentially contribute to contamination of the surgical wound. Example, by incorrect wearing or by lack of air from the side of the mask due to poor string tension. Yeah, you don't need air. Don't worry about it. Objectives, especially people in our society. Don't worry about oxygen. You're athletes, all of you. All right, to determine whether, like surgeons are athletes, by the way, like I just told my sister. So surgeons, yeah, they could do it for 8 hours. They also stand for 8 hours, which no average American could stand for 8 hours straight. Does that mean we should all be standing every day for 8 hours? That's the same argument, but whatever. Here's a real fact. Real study. Objectives to determine whether the wearing of disposable surgical face masks by the surgical team during clean surgery reduces prospective post-operative, surgical wound infection. Search methods. In December 2015, for this 7th update, we searched the Cochrane Wounds Specialist Register, and it goes in to tell you where they got all this data. Okay, I'll put a link in the description. Selection criteria, randomized controlled trials. Good luck trying to find those nowadays. And quasi-randomized controlled trials comparing the use of disposable surgical masks with the use of no mask. Now, not mind you, these are the real surgical masks, not your underwear, okay? Dirty underwear, I don't recommend that, even worse. But let's go on, because I don't see any studies about wearing underwear on your face yet. Those will probably be coming up. It says data collection as to review authors extracted data independently. Main results. We include 3 trials involving a total of 2,106 people. There was no statistically significant difference in infection rates between the masked and unmasked group in any of the trials. That's the summary of the whole thing. No difference. Because it doesn't work. But I digress. We identified no new trials for this latest update. All right, people, you can't do a Google search to page 1, second thing down. That's all you got to do to stop wearing your mask. Because there's about 100 other articles like this. Studies that show you're idiots. I mean, it's stupid to wear underwear on your face. That's all. I'm just trying to make a point. From the limited results, it is unclear whether the wearing of surgical face masks by members of the surgical team has any impact on surgical wound infection rates for patients undergoing clean surgery. It says plain language summary. Disposable surgical face masks prevent surgical wounds, etc. Okay, background. Surgeons and nurses performing clean surgery wear disposable face masks. The purpose of the face mask is thought to be twofold. Okay? To prevent the passage of germs from the surgeon's nose and mouth into the patient's wound, and to protect the surgeon's face from sprays and splashes from the patient. I forgot to mention that, but that's a good point. Face mask, obviously, these are scientists, so they think a little more than I can, maybe. Even though I can read their stuff and then make deductions, so I don't have to be a scientist to know that we're being tricked. Okay. Face masks are thought to make wound infections after surgery less likely. However, incorrectly worn masks may increase the likelihood of the wound getting contaminated with germs. We wanted to discover whether wearing a face mask during surgery makes infections of the wound more likely after the operation. Now you're going to go, oh, see, incorrectly. You think, you idiots, wearing these when you're touching it every 30 seconds and adjusting it and moving it down to breathe because you can't breathe? You're touching all that bacteria that's building up on the outside. That'll be another video. That's another study recently done. how you're literally getting people sick from your mask. That's a study, by the way. This review aimed to find out if wearing disposable face masks increases or decreases the number of cases of wound infection after clean surgery. Study characteristics. We searched for all studies that had been done in the past relevant to this topic. They did it for me, so we can go with this study right here. Studies included in our analysis were those looking at the use of face masks in clean surgery in adults and children. Clean surgery is when the operation does not go into organs that may contain bugs, such as the lungs, gut, genitals, and bladder. Infections of the wound are less likely to occur after clean surgery compared to unclean surgery. We chose to look at this type of surgery because infections occurring after clean surgery would be more likely be due to the use of the face mask and not because of the nature of the operation. We also only looked at one particular type of study, the randomized controlled trial, RCT, where the people involved, participants, were randomly put into one of two groups. One group where the surgical team wore a face mask during the operation, and one group where the surgical team did not wear a face mask. We compared the number of wound infection cases occurring after surgery between those two groups. Got it? One group, no mask. These are surgeons. The other group, surgeons and team wearing masks. Key results overall. We found very few studies and identified no new trials for this latest update. We analyzed a total of 2,106 participants from the 3 studies we found. There's only 3 studies, by the way, because nobody would ever study this, because if air is going through the mask, germs are going through. Period. That's why there's only 3 studies. And all 3 say you're wasting your time. But whatever. All 3 studies showed that wearing a face mask during surgery neither increases nor decreases the number of wound infections occurring after surgery. We conclude that there is no clear evidence that wearing disposable face masks affects the likelihood of wounds infections developing after surgery. That's pretty close contact, by the way. Lot closer than 6 feet. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The 6-foot rule is for something else, but you're never going to understand that. If you can't take your mask off, there's no way I could explain to you why you're standing 6 feet apart. You're going to find out, though. This country is changing very fast. The findings from this review cannot be generalized for several reasons. The studies included only looked at clean surgery. Some of the studies did not specify what type of face mask was used, and one of the studies did not involve many participants, therefore making the findings less credible. Yeah, the problem is, there's studies that show if airflow blows, if you could blow a candle out, you're not stopping a single germ. Germs are tiny, tiny, tiny. Very tiny. So if you could breathe oxygen molecules through the mask, yeah, get it? If you're getting any airflow, get it? Or don't. You don't, because you're all wearing masks. The quality of the studies we found was low overall. The way in which participants, it's low because it's a dumb study. They've only found 3 studies. Who would even think of doing a study about this? Because air is flowing through. If air is flowing through, I'll say this one last time, germs are getting through. Since surgical face masks were originally developed to contain and filter droplets containing microorganisms expelled from the mouth and nose during surgery, they were introduced around a century ago, when science was pretty primitive, as a method of protecting patients from the risk of surgical wound infection. And you know what that risk was? The surgeons didn't used to wash their hands. So when they were in your gut or they delivered a baby, they didn't wash their hands between somebody's surgery and the baby delivery. The baby would end up all sick, and they didn't know why. That's why people were getting sick from surgery, not from the mask. They threw the mask on, figuring, it can't hurt. But it does hurt, because it cuts your oxygen. In today's world, you shouldn't be doing that. How about that? They were introduced around a century ago. Okay. The costs incurred when a patient contracts a surgical wound infection are considerable in financial as well as social terms. It has been estimated that each patient with a surgical wound infection requires an additional hospital stay of 6.5 days, and that hospital costs are doubled. and that was a 2000 study. When extrapolated to all acute hospitals in England, it is estimated that the annual cost is about $1 billion or whatever. There's the reason they wear it. For the insurance accountant told them to. Just like doctors today can't do their job unless the accountants tell them whether they can do it or not. Your doctors aren't the doctors of the old days. They're not allowed to think anymore. Just like you're not. If you're wearing these masks, you're not thinking. Because you could have done a quick Google medical study face mask, and then you would find this is all horse shit. This is about humiliating you, by the way. You want to know what, this is a ritual that the Masons use, for example, the apprentice Masons, when you're brand new to Masonry. And once you're in Masonry, you're a Satanist that's never coming out. You can't get out. So good luck with that. The primary purpose of surgical masks is to, and they always do these rituals to humiliate people because it's fun. You know, they're watching you guys on cameras. So when they see, all right, that guy's going to be a problem. He's not wearing a mask. But the rest, they just fell in line. Lockstep. Look up 2010, the book called Lockstep. 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 There's a reason that sounds familiar, isn't there? There's a reason you're seeing people put their fists high with the front facing forward. It's happened before, but that's a whole nother story. It's part, though, tied to this, because if they can make you take a knee by putting these masks on and humiliating yourself in public, they got you. The primary, they got you. You're not going to do shit. They know that. That's why they have you wearing masks. Not because of a germ, not to stop you from catching a cold. Okay? And even if it was for a flu, the flu has to cycle. And they even admit that to you. You have to admit that to yourself. This initially was all to flatten the curve so the hospitals weren't overwhelmed. Well, guess what? They were so unoverwhelmed, 40% of hospital workers are now unemployed. So there's your pandemic. They're laying off doctors, nurses, and hospital employees. So there's that. Just my imagination, right? I'm the one yelling at everybody. I'm the one panicking. I'm not panicking. I'm just telling you, hey, there's a tsunami coming and you're all going, no, there ain't. And I'm getting louder because it's getting closer. That's that. That's why I come off a little rough on the edges, because it's getting to where the water's about to crush us, okay? The primary purpose of surgical masks is to provide protection for the patient from the surgical team. Masks have also been advocated as a barrier to protect the surgical team from the patient, 1996, etc. Look it up. The systemic review does not investigate the use of surgical masks for this purpose. Surgical face masks are disposable and generally made up of 3 or 4 layers, often with 2 filters that prevent passage of material greater than 1 micron, therefore trapping bacteria of that size or larger. Face masks of this type are claimed to provide protection for a minimum of 4 hours. Yeah. What about underwear on your face? They didn't go over that. I bet you it's worse. If they did a study in history, because that's what they were looking at, the epidemiology, how many studies are out there about wearing underwear and t-shirts over your face? How many germs is that blocking? Just saying. Okay? These are real surgical masks. Nobody's wearing those. They're wearing underwear and stuff. And it doesn't matter if you wear it anyways. That's my point. Worn correctly, the mask should cover the nose with the metal band contouring the bridge of the nose. The mask should be drawn underneath the mouth. There's a certain way you got to put it on, by the way. There's a way you have to literally snap this thing on. Otherwise, it won't work anyways. It'll work less. Let's put it that way. Air gets out of the sides. And it's just a mess. And no amateur, unless you're a surgeon who's been trained for 15 years of doing surgery, do you know how to put a mask on properly. And it doesn't matter. That's my whole point. But whatever. Although the surgical mask is designed to protect the patient, there are several ways in which it could actually contribute to the contamination of the wounds. No shit, because you're building up bacteria levels on the outside where it's cooler. There's studies right now that show that, but we'll get to that later. They figured that out here, it looks like. Firstly, insufficient tension on the strings causes venting or leakage of air. There's leakage of air through the mask and germs through the mask, especially your underwear on your face. That's not going to stop a germ at all of the mask. The exhalation of moist air increases resistance. That's why you can't breathe. That's a theme going around lately. I can't breathe. Isn't that? Do you see it yet? I can't breathe. I remember people making videos like, hey, this mask, I can't breathe with the mask on. A few months later, we got somebody killed with, whatever. That theme is just becoming, now, whatever. You won't get it. The exhalation of moist air increases resistance, which is thought to exacerbate the problem of venting. Secondly, they give you the year, and you could link in. I'll link all this stuff. Also studies wicking as a method of conveying liquid via capillary action as possibly contributed. You're wearing that mask all day, and you're building up outer layer bacteria on the outside all day. And now it's going to start falling off. Get it? How much room is on your mask before germs start to literally drop off? I think that's what they're talking about here. It says wicking. That's what wicking is. Yeah, you're wicking. You guys are making it way worse. But wear your mask. And panic like the lady at Jewel did yesterday. Thank you. She was literally terrified when she looked at me. Do you have your mask, sir? I brought one in case somebody freaked out. So, yeah, I did have one. And I had to put it on to get to the end of the checkout. Unbelievable. It was right before, it was over by I made it all the way through the store. I was coming down to the last aisle to go down to the checkout. And this lady caught me. She caught me. Contributing to the passage of bacteria. Thirdly, a mask could cause contamination by wiggling. This is the term used to describe friction of the mask against the face, which has been shown to cause the dispersal of skin scales. You guys are dropping dangerous bacteria off your face in public. And then you're touching it every 10 minutes or every 10 seconds, however long it takes. Everybody's touching that outside. You're getting your fingers all dirty, right? Then you touch the grocery store stuff. Then you touch the door handle. Do you get it yet? Does anybody see what I'm saying? Can you read this? Read this. Please read this. And then ask yourself, what are you doing? Are you being made fun of? Yes, you are. They're laughing at you. But nobody can shame anybody, so I guess you can't say that. This is a term used to describe friction. Skin scales. That sounds healthy. Skin scales from the face resulting in possible contamination of surgical wounds. In addition, that drops on your groceries, by the way, in the grocery bagger when he's bagging all your food. His scales are falling off his face. Just remember that when you're all happy when you see people with their mask on for an 8-hour shift. Did they got any scales falling off their face? Probably. Just saying. I'm just thinking out loud. Not even opinion. Just thinking. Asking questions. For example, I'm trying not to get mad either. Because this has been going on for 6 months. And people now are masking up more than ever. More than the peak. I can't believe it. The alleged peak, I should say. Removal of the mask by grasping the filter section could result in contamination of the wearer's hands. What did I just say? Whereas disposal is recommended by handling the tape only. Are you all doing that, by the way? Because I saw masks in the parking lot. I saw masks in shopping carts. You guys are leaving your disgusting scale skin-filled masks all over the place for children to pick up. Maybe they'll even put it on. What happens when a child picks that up and gets a nasty infection? Anybody? Does anybody care? No, you don't. You just want to be cool and hip. I got my mask on. I'm virtue signaling that I care about people. Do you? Because you didn't even Google this. You didn't even Google PubMed and look up any fact about any of this. Nobody has, except for a handful of people. I'm one of them, and now I'm raising my voice because it's getting where the water's about to hit land, and you're all going, see, you got to wear a mask. No, you don't. And now there's states mandating you got to wear it outside. You don't see what's coming? This is called, whatever. You're going to find out. The camps are next. The issues calling the question, they'll teach you how to wear a mask there, I'm sure. The issues calling the question is whether you're going to be on your feet or knees. You take a knee. You put a mask on, you're taking a knee. But that's okay, because a lot of you need to take a knee because you're weak. These issues, and I understand that. I'm not knocking you. All I'm saying is you're literally hurting other people without realizing it. That's the trick. Evil doesn't want you to be healthy. So those of you that are believing these idiots that are telling you Wear a mask for your own good. That means the opposite in government language. In socialist, communist language. That's who's telling you to do this. They've done this before. Look up in history. Look up your Masons, how they humiliate people with these masks. This goes back to the 1500s. This is not new psychology. This is psychology that works. They pull it every time, just like they pulled the race card to get the Antifa over to Black Lives Matter. Now Black Lives Matter is technically the one causing all these issues, right? They hijacked you guys. Now, it's not Black Lives, or it's not Antifa doing it. It's Black Lives Matter doing it. No, it's not. And good people now are being hijacked into being tricked into believing something that doesn't exist. You guys are crazy. These are the same people that wore the face mask. Like, you see it. Despite acknowledgement of controversy surrounding the use of masks, they are currently recommended by numerous operating department organizations. There is evidence that face mask practice is inconsistent, possibly due to an inadequate rationale for their use. They can't even rationalize a surgeon using it. Do you hear what I just said? They said there is evidence that face mask practice is inconsistent, possibly due to inadequate rationale for their use. For example, the use of surgical face masks has been abandoned by some surgical teams in part or in whole. This is 2016. This is before you were tricked, people. Operating rooms weren't using them no more in some locations. Because statistically, it doesn't matter. So if you're going to have a bleeder, put a mask on and they'll have a face shield, protective. That's when they'll wear it. Not to keep you safe for germs so they don't get their face wet. If you're cutting on arteries, things like that, where you could have a squirter, you're going to put a mask on. That makes sense. That you could justify. In choosing to wear or not to wear a mask, members of the surgical team could be leaving the patient vulnerable to the risk of wound infection via droplet contamination. Well, that's never been proven. And they can't say that here either. But they're saying maybe. But we'll give them that. We'll give them that. If you threw up in the patient's stomach, yeah, that would be a problem. A clean surgical wound is classified as uninfected operative wound in which no inflammation is encountered and the respiratory, alimentary, genital, or unaffected area, urinary tract is not entered. Non-clean. I think we already went over that. Hang on. Is not without challenges. For example, some patients may, such as the elderly, immunocompromised, do not always display cardinal signs. Okay. So they show there could be a little trouble with the elderly. Now, those are the ones supposedly dropping. So when they get the flu and you're 90 years old, you sometimes die. You also sometimes die when you're 90 years old. Just saying. And when they have to label every car accident victim, every train that runs over somebody as COVID, there's a clue. That's called a clue. Like if you pretend you were a detective, if you started seeing that they're padding the numbers by showing everybody has it, whether they have it or not, and they admit to that. I'm not making this up. They admit to that. And then you incentivize it with cashola. The hospital gets like what, 26 grand if you have a certain case, and then you get 40 grand or just under 40 grand if you put a ventilator on, etc., etc. So now you monetize the benefit? What do you think they're going to do? And then we see videos of hospitals that are empty. Yeah. And I still am looking, by the way. If you do see one and you're listening to this, if you got any video on the internet, anywhere, in the last 6 months that shows somebody who's gone through this, please send me the link so I can do a video about it. I'm still looking. I'm looking for evidence. That's all I'm looking for. All right. Objectives to determine whether the wearing of disposable surgical face masks by the surgical team during cleaning. Okay. Method. Did this go back to the top? Hang on. So anyways, I think you get my point. I'll leave a link to this entire. I'm just scrolling through it real quick. I'll leave a link to this. Read it yourself and start thinking. Might be a good idea because you're wearing a mask for a reason you don't even understand. And it has nothing to do with not getting the clerk at the dollar store or your grocery store sick. This is West Chicago. I'm out.